We are finally here. A MAPPA produced show has so many cracks that even the average viewer can look at that and tell that it's poorly produced. This is going to happen sooner or later considering the way MAPPA was producing shows. And if you don't get the meaning of that, don't worry about it because that's exactly what I'm going to explain in this video. Before that, I just want to look at this comment that was in one of my community posts about Jigokuraku. So are there any chances of a production crash for Hell's Paradise? If they need this many ADs for the very first episode, community posting question was about how Jigokuraku episode 1 required like 20 or plus animation directors. ADs for very first episode, which is probably among the better looking ones. Yes, episode 1 was the best looking Jigokuraku episode and has simpler designs and less movement to boot. God knows what will happen in mid-season. Well, what happened mid-season is entire studios credited as animation director, which I didn't even know was possible. This is considering God Eater's production died even though they had to bring in lesser amount of ADs for the first 3 episodes. To be fair, that's kind of because God Eater was from a completely different era, you could say, of animation. The industry is just constantly evolving so much, plus Ufotable being adamant about producing most of what they do in-house also kind of was a bad thing in that case. If they did accept outsourcing and external help from the very beginning, God Eater might not even have crashed. Under that is the comment, to be fair, MAPPA has/will never let production crash happen. What I mean when I say production crash is either of 2 things. Either the show still tries to look good and thus needs multiple delays for that to happen. The second one is just say fuck it and produce terrible quality episodes. Jigokuraku fell into both of these categories. To look at the abominable production of Jigokuraku, you have to look before Jigokuraku. You have to look at MAPPA as a whole because it really is a unique experience. To just see the downfall of this studio that was created to surpass its predecessors and correct the mistakes that their predecessors made. Things started going south and in a way also up when legendary animation producer Masao Mariyama gave his throne to my CEO Otsuka. Otsuka is an incredible businessman. He knows first and foremost how to make money, how to make a name for yourself. It's pretty simple when you think about it. How do you get named the biggest anime studio ever? By continuously picking up extremely high-profile projects. The usual way a high-profile project is made could be compared to like one of those extremely expensive sushi places in Japan. You go in there, there's like one big sushi chef. He understands what you want from him. He picks up all the fine ingredients, takes his sweet time, makes an incredible sushi. How can this be compared to animation production terms? Off the top of my head, I'll just take Madhouse and Shingo Natsume. Madhouse was to produce the anime that is One Punch Man. Shingo Natsume was brought into this project. Shingo Natsume has extensive connections with the industry, so he brought in his friends, which is to say literally every big name animator in the industry. They all worked together to create the greatest action masterpiece ever, and then they parted ways. The sushi is expensive and it takes a good amount of time to prepare, but the customer will be super satisfied, and more importantly, the chef will be very satisfied. Now, Studio MAPPA's high-profile production cycles can be compared to your local fast food place. You go there, give your order, there are a lot of people working there, so whoever is free immediately starts working on your order. Once they're done, which will take like 5 minutes, you have your food. There are a lot of imperfections in it. It could have been a lot better, but it is still tasty and it is still fulfilling. A lot of people are around you who are also getting their food very quickly. So you kind of respect the hustle. Coming to these production pipelines, with MAPPA, I would say there are 2 main production pipelines. These are their absolute best of the best, and that is the Yuichiro Hayashi-led production, more like a director-focused one, and the Seshimo-led production, which is more of an animation producer-focused one. Now, because Studio MAPPA is so dysfunctional, there is common intermixing of staff between many projects, but usually people from Team Seshimo are not going to work on Hayashi's projects and vice versa. 2020 is really when Otsuka became like a drug addict. He constantly has to take shots so that the withdrawal symptoms don't hit. But of course, he's not taking drugs. He's taking high-profile animation projects. The first one of the many to come being Attack on Titan the final season. And in classic MAPPA fashion, whichever team was free to work on this project was put into this project. And the team that was free just so happened to be Yuichiro Hayashi's team that had just finished working on Dorohedoro. The Seshimo team, which was not yet the Seshimo team, was the Sungo Park-led God of High School, and yeah, they were busy on God of High School. Otsuka wasn't satisfied. He can't just have the biggest anime IP ever. No, he sees potential in a manga. That could be another extremely huge IP. Keisuke Seshimo finally took his lead animation producer role with Jujutsu Kaisen. But for an action show to be successful, you gotta have good animation. So they just take their pre-existing Sungo Park team and put it into Jujutsu Kaisen. But Sungo Park is still working on God of High School, so the ideal thing to do would be to delay Jujutsu Kaisen and finish God of High School first. But that would just be extra cost, and who needs unnecessary delays that could just be overcome with the staff working extra time? God of High School had a pretty good production schedule, at least to start up with. That would have been a good thing, but that idea, the fact that God of High School had a good schedule, was abused so that the team can simultaneously work on both God of High School and Jujutsu Kaisen. Back then, when it was leaked that Sungo Park is going to direct Jujutsu Kaisen, none of us believed it. I was one of the biggest naysayers because it just sounded that ridiculous. In reality, Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1 was actually produced like a 36 episode continuous season, with the first 12 episodes being a completely different show, that is God of High School. Sungo Park saw God of High School to the end because it was his baby. He was very passionate about making God of High School. He went above and beyond for God of High School, which is why he does not appear at all for the first 6 episodes of Jujutsu Kaisen. The first Jujutsu Kaisen episode he did work on is episode 7, and in classic Sungo Park fashion, he did the storyboards for it, he did like almost all the key animation for it, and for the parts where he didn't do key animation, he did animation direction. And there we have it, end of 2022, we already have 2 extremely dysfunctional production lines. One working on an extremely difficult adaptation of Attack on Titan in a terrible production schedule, and the other one making high-profile action shows without rest. Early 2021, Production Pipeline 1, Attack on Titan finishes airing, so of course they start working on Attack on Titan the final season part 2, but hey, you can't just work on one project and just work on its sequel, you gotta do something extra. This is Studio MAPPA we are talking about. So some of the staff of Attack on Titan also had to work on Kakegurui Twin. But hey, Kakegurui Twin is just a 6-episode ONA series with the combined effort of all the teams that it's being outsourced to, or the sweatshops that MAPPA is running of second key animators and in-betweeners, and all the collective animators that's locked in MAPPA's basement. It's a piece of cake to produce 6 episodes. How's the second main pipeline doing? The Seshimo team. Immediately after working on Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1, they move on to Jujutsu Kaisen 0. Hey, it's a movie production. That's gonna be great. You can do the same thing that Ufotable did with Demon Slayer. You can have an average schedule for the movie and have it just slightly above the TV series quality so that you don't sacrifice Season 2 of your own show. So you could just release Jujutsu Kaisen 0 in early 2022 and then release Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 in mid-2023. But with Manabo Tsuka, the withdrawal symptoms were hitting again. He needed to pick another high-profile project. And I guess the withdrawal symptom this time must have been very strong. What he ended up picking up is the biggest and the most influential manga of our generation, being Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man, again, being a project which is extremely action-centric. Is there even an episode in Chainsaw Man that does not have a single fight scene? So yeah, what do you do to make an incredible action show? Do you start from ground up? Do you buy a plot, make a sushi restaurant there, and bring in talented sushi chefs to work on Chainsaw Man? Or do you just abuse the workers in your fast food chain to produce one more show? They needed action. Their action team is the Seshimo production pipeline, and so the Seshimo team now also has Chainsaw Man to work with. This completely threw off Jujutsu Kaisen's production cycle. Jujutsu Kaisen 0 had a much shorter than required production schedule. In the end, the way it was produced was like just another TV episode. Jujutsu Kaisen 0 is less like a movie and more like Oshinoko's first episode. 2 of the star action animators of the Seshimo line, being Keishiro Watanabe and Tatsuya Shihara, only did minor segments for Jujutsu Kaisen 0 because they had to work on Chainsaw Man. One of the best action directors in the line, Ryu Nakayama, only did very minor work for Jujutsu Kaisen 0 because, again, he had to work on Chainsaw Man. He's the fucking director. The only people who gave equal priority to both is Koki Fujimoto and Hironori Tanaka. Koki Fujimoto because I guess he's an insane man. His output for both Jujutsu Kaisen 0's movie and Chainsaw Man, it's unfathomable. Hironori Tanaka, again, I understand. He's Hironori Tanaka. Of course, passion projects, it's not all that a studio is ever going to do. And firstly, I want to talk about, just for the sake of easy comparison, Tuck Top Destiny. The way MAPPA is doing at least 2 high-profile projects every year, Madhouse is doing 1 every 2 years. This gives them ample time to make each of these projects absolute masterpieces and also allows them space to fit in a random project like Tucked Up Destiny that aired in 2021 alongside Sonny Boy. Because they could have ample production time and such, they could build up a team from scratch for this one project, and of course the fact that they're only doing 50% of the show helps. The other 50% of course being done by MAPPA. And MAPPA's 50% of Tucked Up Destiny did not look very good because they cannot handle a project like this amidst their teams working on Attack on Titan, Chainsaw Man, and Jujutsu Kaisen. There is, however, another production pipeline being the Takahiro Ogawa animation producer line. They make low priority projects that usually just end up looking better than they're supposed to and do not disrupt the main projects of the studio. Attack on Titan the final season part 2 airs, and it looked pretty damn good considering all the production conditions. They just had the bare minimum time to produce this show, and even in that bare minimum time, some of the staff had to work on the fucking Kakegurui show, but it still looked this good. Later into the year, Chainsaw Man would air, the first 6 episodes of which were absolute near flawless masterpieces. If you're talking about like just the above average Sakuga enjoyer, you could also add episode 7 to that list. Episode 7 only had very minor flaws. But again, oh no, all this time that was being utilized for Chainsaw Man was actually supposed to go to Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. So they just split the production team again so that they can work on Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 and Chainsaw Man simultaneously. This happened around the time Chainsaw Man episode 9 was being produced. There were still 2 episodes prioritized, being episode 8 by Gosso and episode 10 by Yoshihara, but the rest suffered a lot, so that the staff has something to show for Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. Don't think that Jujutsu Kaisen had a 1.5 year buffer time to produce Season 2. That is not what happened. Think of it again like a team going from producing a 36 episode anime of God of High School plus Jujutsu Kaisen, then moving on immediately to Jujutsu Kaisen Zero's movie, and again, less than a year later having to produce a 35 episode anime of Chainsaw Man plus Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. It is abominable. The team is working under terrible conditions, and it's starting to show. Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 will have a 3-week break after airing for 5 weeks. I knew the conditions were bad, but this is outrageous beyond belief. Looking at the other line though, the Hayashi line, how the turntables, because I don't know what Hayashi did, but he managed to get a good schedule for the last 2 parts of Attack on Titan. The final season part 3 special looked beautiful. It's some of the best that Attack on Titan's ever looked. And part 2 will also most likely look very damn good. At least from the trailer, it looks pretty good. What's that though? An itch. Probably the same itch that Manabu Otsuka was feeling, because he was not satisfied. Vinland Saga's incredibly passionate team was just stranded, probably working on the side of the road or something, because they did not have a studio. So Otsuka did the logical thing and, yeah, put them under MAPPA. But Vinland Saga is another high-profile project. What do? No one is free. Everyone is busy with the big projects. You just call it a MAPPA project and don't provide any studio assistance whatsoever. Vinland Saga Season 2 looked beautiful, yes. But behind the scenes, it was struggling because the staff was just a small group of tightly linked people. They lost some of the major action directors that they had in Witch Studios that did not join the project again. And they got absolutely fuck all help from the studio that they are working for, except episode 15. Episode 15 of Vinland Saga Season 2 was directed by Tokyo Igarashi, who has been a key director in Attack on Titan the final seasons, and with him of course came a bunch of Attack on Titan the final season staff. Pretty sure that Omine also did key animation in this episode. But of course, they could only spare this 1 episode to work on Vinland Saga. They could not work on any more episodes because, you know, they still have to work on Attack on Titan. If Vinland Saga Season 2 had gone to another studio with fresh talent available, the staff definitely would have had even more help coming from that studio. But of course, no studio was willing to pick up Vinland Saga Season 2, which is why it went to MAPPA. And I guess 1 episode of help is better than nothing. But imagine Attack on Titan is finished airing, alright? Imagine if you got a fucking Yuichiro Hayashi episode of Vinland Saga Season 2. Oh my god, I just thought about the possibilities. And now I need a change in underwear. But of course, Vinland Saga Season 2 was lucky because it had a pre-existing, extremely passionate staff who were willing to stick with the project regardless of whether it had a studio or not. Also helps with the fact that even as a high-profile project, it did not have all that much action, which is the only reason Cloverworks can still thrive. You can see the Cloverworks Amehara line, right? It's almost as bad as the Tsushimo line. They worked on One Direct Priority, and then within a year, less than a year really, they had to work on My Dress Up Darling, and then like a few months later, they put out Bocchi the Rock. So you'd think the one that struggled the most was Bocchi the Rock. And while, yes, Bocchi the Rock did struggle, it was putting out episodes right before the production deadline. But the one that suffered the most was One Direct Priority, which had multiple delays and, of course, was also literally hospitalizing staff. Action, just by the fundamental nature of it, requires more effort to make. So Vinland Saga Season 2 really only succeeded because of its very unique circumstances of having a very good production schedule, having pre-existing loyal staff that will not abandon the project, and having source material that does not have as much action as the previous season. But hey, what if Otsuka decides to pick up a new action-focused project? Enter Hell's production. Jigokuraku is action-focused, hence requires a lot of effort to make, and it obviously did not have a pre-existing staff, because, I mean, it's a new show. And this time he finally got to see what happens when a studio, like, literally does not have staff to spare. What team were they supposed to sacrifice? They're not going to sacrifice Attack on Titan, and they absolutely cannot sacrifice Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man because they're already touch and go as is. Usually, no matter how terrible the production is, you at least need one good animator to carry the project. Studio Engi Productions have Ryuki Hashimoto, JC Staff has Kenichiro Aoki, hell, even fucking Tokyo Revengers had Tomohide Kikunaga. These are people who dedicate their time to these particular projects and continuously do animation for these projects. Hell's Paradise had no one, not a single animator who was willing to stick with the project. The very best case scenario is that they did one cool scene and then disappeared. I really felt sad watching Jigokuraku, and when they did pull talent, I was more pissed than I was happy. When we got the double Shishido plus Omine episodes for the last two, I was angry that these guys are not instead working on Attack on Titan, where, you know, they could work in a better environment and their storyboards could actually be fully realized. But yeah, horrible looking projects like Jigokuraku aside, the main issue that I have with MAPPA's horrible production cycle is the fact that not even the passion projects can be fully realized. Every single one of their main projects have some kind of an issue. Attack on Titan the final season mostly suffers from limited animation and the usage of CGI, which, while yes, it's great, but could have been avoided, at least for final season part 1, if it had a better schedule. Jujutsu Kaisen did not have all that many issues. It looked really good and looked great throughout, except for the fact that, of course, because animation is being finished last minute, the things that come after animation, like the 3D work and the compositing, will have to be rushed even more, and hence they looked kinda shitty. And there were also more than a couple of instances where good layouts were just butchered in the final version. Attack on Titan Final Season Part 2 looked very damn good. It's some of the best that Attack on Titan has actually looked, including the Witch Studios seasons. But again, a good amount of it was unpolished. Jujutsu Kaisen 0 was just produced like a TV episode. It didn't look like a proper super high profile project, or as the Twitter normies would call it, movie quality. Chainsaw Man, again, plenty of issues, animators not being able to finish their work, having to entirely depend on second key animators, especially during the last few episodes, CGI having to be used not because it's a limitation of animation, but a limitation of time, and just the sheer quantity of fluid movement being far lesser than what we got from the first 6 episodes. Finally, to Jigokuraku issues, horrible animation, continuous terrible off-model looking characters. Well, if you're talking about Sakuga, there really isn't much. The fact that characters who lacked detail and did not move still looked awful in almost all the scenes really shows you how horrible the production schedule was. And of course, the animation being finished last minute also means that the other teams are going to have an even harder time. It is the Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1 issue, but amplified many times here. So we have coloring and compositing errors like characters switching their eye color and then switching back, or, you know, just putting in unfinished, uncolored drawings. And my personal favorite, aliasing in 2D drawings. How the fuck is this even possible? Absolutely cream of the crop, unique things that I've never seen in even terribly produced anime. And yeah, the only positive thing for MAPPA right now is that Attack on Titan is at least coming to an end. So their best director and some of their best staff are going to be free to work on other projects. The Attack on Titan team might just immediately move on to Dorohedoro, which would suck for Jigokuraku, but again would kind of make me very happy because Dorohedoro is one of my favorite shows of all time. And Dorohedoro is not going to require all that many 2D animation stuff, so hopefully they can assist with Vinland Saga. As for the Seshimo line, Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2's condition is already very bleak, requiring a 3-week break after 5 episodes. I know they did the same thing with Season 1. They took a 3-week break after the first arc ended, but the first arc was 13 episodes, alright? Not 5 episodes. They're not doing this because they're following Season 1's fashion. They're doing this as an emergency break because they really need it. And once they finish, they're not going to get any production leeway. They have to immediately start working again for Chainsaw Man. And once that ends, they immediately have to start working on Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3. And once that ends, they have to immediately start working on Chainsaw Man again. They really are fucked unless they drop one of these projects or another team picks up one of these 2 projects. But because both these shows require raw animation power, and the Seshimo team is the one that has the most raw animation power, no other team can really afford to do it. And Otsuka is just not going to throw away how big this studio is. Look at what happened with Witch Studios. They made the logical decision of throwing away their 2 biggest IPs, Vinland Saga and Attack on Titan, and now they're stuck doing shit like Suicide Squad Isekai. Otsuka is not going to let that happen to MAPPA. But I still feel like one of these projects, either Chainsaw Man or Jujutsu Kaisen, needs to go. It's terrible, it's bleak, it's sad. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. And yeah, that's really about it. If you like this video, leave a like. If you did not like it, leave a dislike. Thanks for the views.